Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Boy from 2016. So, this, of course, for a lot of people who are to be like fans of like Annabelle or Child's Play, or eventually would also find a comparison to this movie to possibly be like Topher Grace's Delirium or Aftermath from 2021. Because honestly, without there being a doll in either one of those films, like I find those movies and this one to be somewhat similar. The Delirium maybe not as much, but uh, like the Aftermath one, it kind of is to go in the same kind of vein as this movie. But I think Delirium kind of has certain things about this uh, that kind of match. But anyways, it is what it is. So moving on. So for this story, we have a girl named Greta who is to take a job to become a nanny for some kid. And so Greta is to make her way to this location to get away from this past lover. And Greta is to then go on and take this nanny job thinking like, oh, okay, like I'll be able to take care of somebody and maybe it'll kind of make me forget about my past and just focus on what's going on right now. So Greta is to come to find out after meeting with this guy who is to consistently deliver groceries every Friday that Malcolm did not go on and tell Greta a certain secret about the boy that she is to be supposedly watching after. Because when Greta is to go on and eventually meet with these parents and then meet with this boy, come to find out the boy is not a real boy, it's a doll. Greta's very confused. So all of a sudden, Greta starts to realize the further and further she spends with this doll, that this doll has some lifelike thing about it that she doesn't quite grasp or understand until by the end of the movie it actually gets revealed to her what this doll really is. Like, what this doll is to really be, possibly. And then there's also not only uh, a lot of times with both Greta and Malcolm in this film, and we are to see the fate of which that is to lead to Graham's, which is the doll's name, family, but then also a person of sorts that is to go on and try and do away with the doll, get in between Greta and this doll, possibly within this story, to eventually lead us to have there being a reason for why there is a sequel for this film. So, with that said, I've been almost very vague. I don't know how vague, but at the end of the day, I'm going to go into spoilers. This movie is currently on Netflix, and so it's convenient for everyone to see, as well as probably mostly all the stuff that I probably were to describe as like a very similar uh, movie for this. So, with that said, let's just go into that double five time territory. Let's just go into spoilers about this one, and hopefully, I'll be able to go on and describe, because it's spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time we can do spoil this movie. So, in the very beginning of this film, we have Greta who is making her way through this car from this car ride through this with this random stranger to make her way to this location to Mr. and Mrs. Hellshire's home. So it seems that these people are to be rich, um, but we really don't have the real uh, like feeling that like these people throwing money around. But it seems with Greta going on and taking care of a doll, maybe these people have like money to blow. So Greta goes on to meet up with neither one of the Heelshires and is to instead meet up with Malcolm. And he is like, well, hey, like, I'm not Mr. Hillshire at all. Like, I'm just some delivery boy. Like, I can like take you on a tour to only two different locations, of which that I go on and just drop off the food and then I leave. So Greta goes on and helps Malcolm go and deliver the food, and so Greta is kind of wanting a feel for this family, and so Greta starts asking Malcolm questions. And so Malcolm is say it's like, well, they're good people, and so on and so. It's very generic. So Greta then goes on and is to meet with Miss or Mrs. Hillshire, and so she, of course, is to present that Greta will be looking after this doll, and so Miss Hillshire is to go through a daily routine that Greta is going to have to do with this doll. Give it like have it listen to music. The doll likes the music very loud. Go and read it poetry. Uh, Change its clothes and do all of these things like possibly a normal kid would want to do. We have it to where Greta was to go on, and when she was to make it into this house, she takes her shoes off and she's walking around and with her shoes off, and we have to where Miss Hillshire is saying like, "Why do you have your shoes off?" And then when Greta is to make it back to her shoes, she realizes that they are missing, having Mrs. Hillshire say that Grams was to possibly be the culprit for these shoes going missing. So Greta is to get the full list of what she should do to eventually make Grams the doll happy. So we then turn around and have Greta, who is talking to Malcolm and saying like, "Well, hey, thanks for the heads up." And Malcolm is like, "Yeah, like there was no way that I could have like gone on and explained this to you and you would have bought it. Like, so you need to have been told this way." And Greta's like, "Well, yeah, he is making sense." So we go on. We have Greta, who is to come to find out that both of the Hillshires are to supposedly leave because that's why she is the nanny. That's why they hired her. So both of the Hillshires are to go on because there's some kind of emergency of sorts, or there's something that they just need to go on and do. Come to find out, we find this couple is to go and write out this note and is to decide to put rocks in their coats and walk into the water and drown themselves. That's their ultimate plan, to just kind of leave everything behind. After it seems that both the Hillshires are to speak with Brams, and Brams is to like Greta and is to want Greta there. So the Hillshires leave, and they, of course, are to do themselves in, leaving a note that eventually Greta and Malcolm never really get to until the very end of the film. So Greta, when she first gets to be with Grams, she at first is say, Grams, like you're creepy, and so she tosses this blanket over the doll, thinks nothing of it, and Grams just starts drinking wine, is calling her friend, who I believe is actually, uh, I want to say it's Emily, maybe it's Sandy. Anyways, we go on, and Greta is calling her friend, and so her friend is saying that it's like, well, hey, uh, like I get it that like this is a very odd job, but hey, at least it pays well, and like it kind of gets you away from what's going on right now. And Greta's like, well, yeah, but like if this was like a 2 week job, like I'd be better off. Uh, so we have, of course, where eventually Greta is running away from an ex boyfriend that had got very obsessive, a guy named Cole. And so we have, of course, Greta's friend who is mentioning how this guy is to keep calling and eventually is to show up at their place and is to want to know where Greta is at some point. And there's a 10-year-old who I guess had answered this door, and so eventually Cole is to want to get this information of where Greta is. So while eventually this all leads up to that point, we also have Greta that is to have Malcolm consistently keep delivering groceries. And we, of course, have Malcolm trying to flirt with Greta, and he's being very obvious that he's like, hey, like, because Greta is to say, it's like, well, hey, like, why didn't you, like, tell me the secret? And Malcolm's like, oh, that I'm single? And Greta's like, and Malcolm's like, oh, the fact that this thing is a doll. Like, oh, okay. So we have it to where Malcolm is really laying it on thick that he, of course, wants to date this girl, and supposedly because she's an American and he's, of course, from the UK. So we go on, we have Malcolm who is to want to take Greta out uh, as a professional obligation for him to show Greta, to kind of show Greta like uh, where she is to be and so on and so forth. Get to know the lay of the lands, just in case anything happens, and who knows how long she's going to be doing this job here for. Probably forever. So it seems. So we have Greta that is to want to go on a date with Malcolm, so she agrees to this, and eventually she's telling her friend about this. It's like, oh, hey, good for you. Like, now I can finally go on and find the right guy instead of that guy, if you know what I mean. So Greta is to put on this certain specific dress, the only probably real dress that she has, I guess, in this movie, it seems. And she is to want to put on this necklace. So she gets into the shower, and here's where we start to get some unsettling things. As Greta was to go on and have Graham with the kind of covers over his face, and eventually, when Greta is to go back to the doll at certain points, she is to notice that the doll is to take off its own covers. And then when Greta is to go on and want to do this date, we now have the doll, supposedly, who is to have taken this dress and taken this necklace, and now Greta is just within this place with just a towel on. So we have Greta that is eventually wanting to poke around this house because she is starting to hear sounds, and she's kind of tempted to eventually want to go in the attic. She takes this little poker thing to try to pull this attic down, but she can't get to it. All of a sudden, Greta is to realize when she's making it through the house because she's hearing noises. Greta realizes that the attic, that of course was up, is now down, and the ladder is for Greta to make it into the attic. So Greta, just by curiosity, is to make her way to the attic, and what ends up happening is the attic is sealed from behind her. Having Greta go on and realize that Malcolm had made his way to this home calling for Greta, and Greta is stuck in the attic. No matter what she can do, however loud she shouts, she cannot get Malcolm's attention. So Greta then goes on and is to see this shadowy figure within this attic, and she is so terrified that she kind of falls over and I guess passes out. Waking up the next day, realizing that all of a sudden the attic door is now down and she can get out of this area. So eventually, Malcolm is to come back and is to be like, seriously? Like, why would you have gone on and gone into this attic? Like, was it curiosity? Like, so Gordo's like, well, no, this thing was down. And so all of a sudden, Malcolm is to go on and like adjust this thing slightly, and all of a sudden it rolls back up. The whole ladder and everything like that just goes back up. So Malcolm is to go and be like, okay, like this is so. Malcolm, to kind of put Greta at ease, is to say like, well, hey, like, how about I go on and I just kind of stay here? Maybe there's a burglar of sorts. Maybe there's somebody trying to rob you, or so. I don't know. Like we got to protect this house, right? Because otherwise, we're gonna go on to lose the money of which that we had. Uh, Eventually, somebody's gonna kind of think that these two had stolen anything from this family, so you might as well try to do the right thing. So, but Malcolm just wants to spend more time with Greta. So, we have them to play pool, and so eventually Malcolm is to leave at some point, and Greta is to start to realize that this doll is alive. Greta is to realize that the doll is to be on this bed with all the rules, and Greta's like, oh, okay, so you want me to follow all of these? You really want me to follow all of these? Like, okay. To the point where Greta is to get really scared when she continues to have all these nightmares about Grams and his portrait that is to go on and grab her in this dream. And there's also a number of times where Greta is just consistently having these horrible nightmares about this boy. So we go on into this film. Greta is to start following these rules and is doing everything of which that Miss Healshire was doing before. And so Greta is to go on and do all of this stuff. It seems that Malcolm is again kind of making his way to meet up with Greta to say like, well, hey, how about we go out? How about we do the thing that we're going to do before? And Greta's like, yeah, no. Because eventually Greta is to be so freaked out by this point because Greta was to go on and have Grams like show his ability to move this doll all around, and that Grams was to also give Greta her favorite meal, which is the peanut butter and jelly with the crust cut in half, or the bread cut in half. And that really freaked Greta out to the point to where now Greta wants to show Malcolm that this doll really does what it does. So Greta is to put the doll in a room and hope that the doll is to move. So Greta is to put a chalk outline of where this doll was. So Malcolm goes on and is to just kind of play with Greta and just be like, okay, like we'll see if this really legitimately works. So Malcolm goes on with Greta and like kind of just is to just be like, okay, I believe you. So Greta and Malcolm go into the room and go back to the other room where the doll is, and it's still at the same location. And Greta's like, no, like I want to go on and like I'll show you. So Greta goes on and does the same trick again. This time it works. All of a sudden the doll is now like behind the door, and Malcolm's like, "Oh my god! Like I guess this is some spirit or something." So Greta and Malcolm are now alone. Greta is to tell Malcolm about her previous lover and how she wanted to escape from him. So Malcolm is to go on and tell eventually Greta this story about the past and about how Grams was to have died. And so we go on and we have Malcolm who is kind of leaving out certain details, which eventually Graham tells Greta that it seemed at one point there was a woman who went there, or there was a girl who went there to watch over Grams before, and this girl had gone missing. And Malcolm is thinking that Greta is going to get that same fate, and Greta is going on and telling Grams is like, well, like you're not going to hurt me, are you, Grams? So further and further, we have it where Greta at one day is to think that Malcolm is back just kind of playing pool. Come to find out it's none other than Cole who had snuck into this house. So we have, of course, where Cole is saying that he wants to leave this place, that he has booked a flight for them, and that he is just kind of very confused about Greta taking care of this doll. Come to find out, Malcolm is to show up to do this delivery, and Malcolm is to notice Cole and Greta, and so we of course have Cole who turns to Greta, is like, well, hey, like I don't need to be worried about anything, do I? And Greta's like, oh no, you don't need to be worried about anything. As we have Greta and Malcolm who are kind of walking away, trying to make some kind of plan, orchestrating something. So Greta is to go on and tell Grams or Grams Brams. I've probably been saying that wrong the whole time. It's Brams. That he needs to go on and he needs to do something. So Malcolm is outside just kind of waiting for his moment to shine, I guess. So come to find out, Grams is, or Grams, Brams, my apologies, I've probably been, anyways, Brams is to put in blood the words "get out" and is to kill a number of rats and have eventually Cole wake up with blood being dripped upon his face. So now Cole is immediately pointing out that it's Greta and only Greta who is going and doing this. And we have Greta that's like, no, it wasn't me. And we have Cole's like, well, who else could it have been? Could it have been the doll, really? So Cole is to start to get very upset with this doll to the point of him wanting to grasp it from Greta and want to just destroy it at this point. That's when, of course, Malcolm, I guess from the outside, is starting to hear shouting, and so he runs in. We also had a moment between Greta and Malcolm where it seems like they were tempted to go in this room together and be kissing and making out. Then it seems that Brams was to go on and be looking through the keyhole of what was going on, and so that interrupted the two of them going on and doing anything like that. So we have Malcolm trying to stop Cole from doing what he's doing, but it's too late. We have Cole that goes on and takes this doll and breaks it, and he breaks the head. So all of a sudden, we have it to where everybody's kind of confused about what's going on in the house. We have Malcolm that, of course, is telling everybody, it's like, well, I think we should get out of here. We have it seem that this house is starting to shake of sorts. So Cole thinks that he is to, of course, hear something from this mirror. Come to find out, the mirror is to break, and out comes this even larger man with this doll-like mask upon his face, showing us probably the whole time that the doll was not only this little doll here, but this other thing also. This other man who is probably controlling this doll the whole entire time. So it wasn't a ghost, it was just a man who had went crazy and was controlling this doll. So that was the whole thing. So we have it to where the doll is to go on and murder Cole, and then is going after both Greta and Malcolm. So we have Greta and Malcolm that are going like on the inside of the walls throughout this house, trying to figure out how to get out of here. We have, of course, Brams that runs through part of the wall to get to these people, but they eventually get away. Greta and Malcolm eventually are to find this one door that they can get out of, and Greta is having issues trying to get it open. So Malcolm is to try and make a stand against Brams, and we also have Greta who is to, while they're running, find this location that Brams has been consistently living in, as well as also seeing a letter that the Hillshires had left, mentioning that Brams is to have the girl, and eventually they were going to do themselves in, and so Greta is making the conclusion that the old couple were to know exactly what was going to happen with this story at the end of it all. So Greta eventually is to escape from the door that seems to be tough to open. So we have it where Brams is taking out Malcolm, and we have it where Brams is threatening Greta if she leaves, that Brams will kill Malcolm. So Greta is tempted to leave, but then she eventually pushes back because she wants to save Malcolm. And so we go on and have Greta, who's to eventually find Graham is back in the house. And so Greta is teaching is treating Brahms like the doll, telling him that it's time for bed and that eventually she'll do the same thing that she did for all the doll things. Brahms is wanting a kiss. So Greta has to forcibly go on and do this even though she says like, well, no kiss tonight, it's your punishment. Brahms is like, no, kiss. So Greta is to give this masked man this kiss, and eventually we have Greta who strikes into this man, stabbing him into the chest, but it seems that that doesn't kill this man off. Forcibly having Brahms that takes Greta is choking her, raising her, and Greta is to take the screwdriver that she stabbed into him and pull it back out and stab this man doll, into the chest again, having now Brahms drop. So Greta is to find Malcolm, is to grab him and run the heck out of there, thinking that this doll man is dead. Come to find out, Brahms is actually uh, deciding that like that couple from before is a lost cause, and that he is just going to rebuild this doll again and start all over again at some point with a sequel. So really, for the most point, that ends up being most of that film. I kind of wanted to kind of skip over the like consistent points. We're just kind of going through a day to day to day. I just wanted to focus on the main parts. And so with that said, I hopefully covered everything. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I forgot, because I'm sure there probably is. But with that said, I'm just going to get out of here so I can go on and call it a day. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.